A private reception at St. James's Palace just hosted the most dramatic royal showdown of the year. Bypassing Queen Camilla entirely, the elderly Duke of Kent handed a legendary collection of Romanov sapphires straight to Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The unexpected family transfer has left the Queen absolutely fuming behind closed doors. Palace insiders confirm that the future Queen just secured her biggest victory yet, and the internal balance of power has permanently shifted. Oh yeah, the velvet box on the St. James's Palace table. The heavy gilt clock on the mantelpiece inside the drawing room at St. James's Palace struck exactly 4 o'clock. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood near the fireplace. She wore a tailored cream coat dress and was talking quietly with a senior charity trustee. The room was populated by 40 guests attending a private exhibition of Commonwealth craftsmanship. The event was entirely routine, and the Palace press corps had already completed their photography for the afternoon. The atmosphere altered the moment a side door opened near the main gallery. The Duke of Kent, now 90 years old, entered the room slowly, leaning on his signature silver-topped walking cane. He was accompanied by 2 uniformed royal security guards and his private equity solicitor. The guests stepped back to create a clear path toward the center of the room. The solicitor carried a dark timber document case, which he placed directly onto a green leather-covered table under the main crystal chandelier. The Duke stopped directly in front of Catherine and gave a slight nod. He did not look toward the palace officials standing near the door. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small, ornate iron key. He placed the key directly on top of the timber case. He then gestured for his solicitor to open the latches. The timber box contained a deep blue velvet case bearing the combined crests of the Romanov and Windsor families. The solicitor clicked open the brass hinges, revealing a staggering 3-row necklace of deep Romanov sapphires. The stones were bordered by hundreds of old mine-cut diamonds that caught the overhead light instantly. The guests closest to the table stopped speaking mid-sentence. These were not the common sapphire pieces the public is used to seeing Catherine wear from Princess Diana's personal collection. These were massive, historic gems from the lost Imperial Russian collection. The historical facts of the transfer are legally absolute. The Duke of Kent did not ask for permission from the sovereign to bring these items to the palace. He holds the absolute independent legal title to this specific subset of ancestral jewelry. The transfer document lying next to the velvet case was a formal deed of gift. The document carried the stamps of the London Probate Court and was dated for immediate execution on Monday afternoon. The immediate impact of this delivery created a massive tactical problem for the royal household staff. Queen Camilla's personal assistant was standing at the back of the room observing the entire exchange. The assistant immediately took out her mobile phone and sent an encrypted text message to the private secretary at Clarence House. Camilla had spent months organizing the logistics for an upcoming state banquet for European heads of state. She had already requested an audit of the palace vault to see if these specific Russian pieces could be integrated into her own wardrobe. The Duke of Kent ignored the visible panic of the staff. He took Catherine's hand, spoke to her for less than 30 seconds, and then watched as his solicitor handed over the signed deed of gift. Catherine accepted the paperwork with a formal bow. Her security detail immediately moved forward to secure the timber box, wrapping it in a protective canvas transport bag. The elderly Duke then turned back toward the side door, exiting the room just 5 minutes after he arrived. This sudden public presentation introduces an intense constitutional mystery. How did a junior branch of the royal family manage to keep a collection of priceless Imperial Russian jewels completely out of the reach of King Charles's central inventory? The answer sits in a private inheritance trust established by Queen Mary during the economic depression of the 1930s. She wanted to ensure her younger children had independent assets that could never be reclaimed by the main crown line during future political or family restructuring. The financial data regarding the collection explains why the palace is currently in a state of administrative shock. Independent jewelry experts in London value the Romanov sapphire necklace at over £15 million on the open market. More importantly, the collection carries an irreplaceable historical provenance that elevates the public profile of any royal lady who wears it. By passing this asset directly to Catherine, the Duke of Kent has given the future queen a massive symbolic advantage over the current queen consort. The crowd in the drawing room slowly began to resume their conversations, but the energy had completely changed. The The charity exhibition was forgotten. Palace officials were already whispering near the windows, trying to figure out how to frame this event for the evening news cycle. Catherine remained entirely composed, returning to her conversation with the charity trustee as if a multi-million-pound historic treasure had not just been dropped onto her ledger. The mystery now shifts directly to the reactions brewing behind the walls of Clarence House, where Camilla's team was frantically reviewing the historic family jewelry logs to find a flaw in the transfer deed. They were about to discover that the Duke of Kent's legal fortress was built by the most meticulous legal minds of the previous century, leaving the Queen Consort with absolutely no way to overturn the gift. The hidden Romanov lineage in the Windsor vaults. An archivist wearing white cotton gloves pulled a heavy leather-bound logbook from a climate-controlled shelf inside the secure basement vault at Windsor Castle. The date stamp on the document case read January 11th, 1920. The clerk turned the brittle parchment pages until he reached an inventory entry written in dark black ink. It detailed a shipment of loose gemstones that had arrived in London aboard a British Royal Navy warship just weeks earlier. At the top of the inventory page, the archivist had simply written the words, "Property of the Grand Duchess." The historical facts behind that 1920 logbook entry read like an international espionage report. During the height of the Russian Revolution in the winter of 1919, Grand Duchess Maria Pavlovna fled her palace in St. Petersburg as insurgent forces advanced on the estate. Before escaping toward the Black Sea coast, she hid her vast collection of family jewels inside a secret wall compartment. In her private dressing room, she refused to let the historic imperial treasures fall into the hands of the revolutionary government. The rescue of the jewelry collection was executed by a British secret agent named Albert Stopford. Stopford was a trusted associate of the British aristocratic elite and a personal friend of the Romanov family. Wearing a specialized worker's disguise, he used a duplicate iron key to slip into the abandoned Vladimir Palace under the cover of a heavy ground fog. He dismantled the secret wall compartment, transferred the massive sapphire necklaces, diamond tiaras, and pearl brooches into 2 leather bags and quietly smuggled them across the border to London. When the smuggled bags arrived in the United Kingdom, Queen Mary immediately recognized the artistic and political value of the collection. She was a passionate jewelry collector who understood that the collapse of the European monarchies provided a unique opportunity to expand the British royal inventory. She used her personal funds to purchase the 3-rose sapphire necklace directly from the Grand Duchess's exiled children. She did not use state money or funds associated with the official treasury, ensuring the pieces remained the absolute private property of her direct family line. This private transaction introduces the central mystery regarding the current ownership structure of the stones. Why did this specific necklace avoid being merged into the general collection of the crown jewels currently kept on display at the Tower of London? The answer lies in Queen Mary's deep personal affection for her younger son, George, the first Duke of Kent. When he married Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark in 1934, Queen Mary gave the Romanov Sapphires directly to the new Duchess as a personal wedding gift. The legal wording of that 1934 wedding gift agreement was incredibly specific. It stated that the stones were to form a permanent, independent family heirloom trust managed exclusively by the Kent branch of the family. The trust agreement completely bypassed the standard sovereign line of succession. This meant that when King George VI took the throne, or when Queen Elizabeth started her long reign, they held absolutely no administrative authority over the deployment or inheritance of the Russian sapphires. The pieces belonged entirely to the Duke of Kent's private estate. This arrangement created an intense pocket of court tension during the late 1970s. Princess Michael of Kent began wearing several of the historic Russian pieces to high-profile state dinners at Buckingham Palace. Her public appearances in the jewels reportedly frustrated several senior royal advisors who felt that a junior branch of the family should not outshine the direct line of succession during major public events. Yet, because the 1934 trust deeds were entirely ironclad, the Central Palace administration had no legal power to confiscate the jewelry or restrict its use. The current legal reality of the collection became a major focus for palace attorneys on Wednesday morning. Queen Camilla's administrative team had spent 48 hours trying to locate a loophole in the Kent family trust framework. They hoped to argue that Because the current Duke of Kent is 90 years old, his ability to execute an independent deed of gift should be subject to a formal review by the King's Privy Council. They wanted to freeze the transfer before the Velvet Box could leave the St. James's estate. The independent solicitors representing the Kent estate shattered that plan within an hour. They produced a validated codicil signed by Queen Elizabeth during her Golden Jubilee celebrations in 2002. The late Queen had personally reviewed the Kent family trust logs and appended her sovereign signature to confirm the absolute independence of the heirloom trust. She did this to prevent any future monarch from attempting to forcibly absorb the junior branch's private treasures into the central sovereign pool during a future downsizing initiative. The presentation of that 2002 codicil left Camilla's legal team entirely defeated. The facts were clear, the signatures were verified, and the historical lineage was unbroken. The Romanov Sapphires did not belong to King Charles. They did not belong to the British state, and they were completely outside the influence of the Queen Consort. The elderly Duke of Kent held the absolute, unchallenged right to give the £15 million treasure to whoever he pleased, and he chose the future Queen. Why Camilla fumed behind? Closed doors at Clarence House. Queen. Camilla walked into the private sitting room at Clarence House on Thursday evening, tossed her beige leather handbag onto a silk-covered armchair, and pulled a printed 3-page memo from her folder. King Charles sat near the desk lamp, adjusting his reading glasses as he reviewed a draft itinerary for an upcoming Commonwealth tour. Camilla did not sit down. She tapped the edge of the mahogany desk with her finger, pointing directly at a paragraph detailing the royal wardrobe allocations for the next winter season. Her voice carried a sharp, unmistakable edge that caused the private secretary standing near the door to quickly step back into the hallway and close the door. The specific cause of this intense friction was a series of behind-the-scenes maneuvers regarding the royal jewelry allocations that had been playing out for over 6 months. Camilla had been working with the master of the royal wardrobe to select the exact historical pieces she intended to wear during a highly publicized state visit from European monarchs scheduled for later in the year. She had set her sights specifically on the legendary Imperial Russian collection pieces, viewing them as the perfect visual statement to solidify her senior public profile as Queen Consort. She wanted a display of jewelry that would match the grandeur of the historic crowns worn by previous queens. The administrative facts of the palace wardrobe allocation system explain why this sudden gift to Catherine disrupted everything. Under standard palace protocol, the reigning monarch maintains a central registry called the Royal Collection Trust. This registry includes thousands of historic tiaras, necklaces, and brooches that are traditionally loaned out to senior royal women for official state events. Camilla, as Queen Consort, holds the primary right of refusal over these central assets. She can essentially claim any piece in the public vault for her personal use, pushing the wardrobe choices of junior royal women like Catherine or Princess Sophie down the priority list. But this specific set of Romanov stones had completely escaped her grasp because of the independent legal structure of the Kent family trust. Camilla realized that Catherine now possessed a collection of deep blue sapphires that completely outshone the standard sapphire sets available in the central royal collection. The realization that a junior royal woman would step out at the next state banquet wearing pieces with a superior historical provenance and a vastly higher market value was deeply frustrating to her. The Queen Consort viewed the Duke of Kent's independent action as a direct, public challenge to her central authority over the court's public image. The situation introduces an interesting historical mystery regarding a series of private conversations that took place at Sandringham during the Christmas holidays. Camilla had reportedly spoken with the Duke of Kent during a private family lunch, dropping several subtle hints about her desire to see the Russian sapphire collection reunited with the main sovereign inventory. She suggested that housing the stones within the Central Palace vaults would ensure their maximum security and allow for more frequent public displays. The Duke listened to her suggestions in total silence, offering nothing more than a polite nod before shifting the conversation to discuss the local agricultural harvest. We now know that the Duke's silence was a deliberate stalling tactic, while his private attorneys finalized the deed of gift for Catherine. He had already decided that the legacy of his grandmother, Queen Mary, should be placed in the hands of the woman who represents the long-term future of the British monarchy, rather than a queen consort whose tenure is tied to the current reign. He viewed Catherine's impeccable public record and high popularity ratings as the ultimate guarantee that the historic stones would be treated with the traditional dignity they deserve. This hidden preference created an incredible wave of tension during a formal staff meeting at Buckingham Palace on Friday morning. Camilla's senior advisors met with the king's private solicitors to see if they could mount a secondary challenge based on the rules of royal estate taxation. They argued that a private transfer of historic assets valued at over £15 million should be subject to a heavy inheritance tax unless the pieces were formally registered as part of the official state collection. They hoped to use the threat of a massive tax bill from the inland revenue to pressure the Kent estate into canceling the deed of gift. The palace attorneys quickly crushed that administrative hope by producing a specific clause inserted into the family jewelry trust by the late Queen Elizabeth. The clause explicitly stated that any heirloom transfers occurring within the private family trust branches are entirely exempt from standard estate duties, provided the recipient holds a direct royal title granted by the Crown. Because Catherine holds the title of Princess of Wales, her inheritance is completely shielded from any tax interventions by the Treasury or the Queen's financial advisors. The legal framework was entirely bulletproof, leaving Camilla with absolutely no administrative leverage to block the transfer. The structural reality of this defeat left the Queen's inner circle in a state of absolute panic. They understood that the public presentation of these stones would send an undeniable visual signal to the global media. When Catherine steps out wearing the Romanov Sapphires, the public will see a future queen who enjoys the absolute backing of the old royal guard. The visual contrast between Camilla's standard palace pieces and Catherine's imperial treasure will emphasize the inevitable transition of power, highlighting where the true future of the institution lies. The sitting room at Clarence House remained tense late into the evening, as the king tried to calm the situation. Charles pointed out that the family could not afford a public rift over jewelry during a period of intense public scrutiny regarding royal expenditures. He made it clear that any further attempts to challenge the Duke of Kent's gift would inevitably leak to the national press, creating a highly damaging narrative of internal greed and jealousy. Camilla finally conceded the point, locking her printed memo back inside her leather folder, but her inner circle confirms that the frustration over this massive public snub remains a volatile topic behind the palace walls. The Princess of Wales solidifies her sovereign future. A heavy brass key turned inside the lock of a secure metal cabinet located inside the private dressing room at Adelaide Cottage. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, took a deep breath as her chief protection officer stepped back to allow her full access to the shelf. Resting on the gray velvet lining was the dark timber document case that had been delivered from St. James's Palace just 24 hours earlier. Catherine lifted the lid, exposing the gleaming diamond border of the Romanov sapphires to the bright afternoon sun filtering through the window. She did not place the necklace around her neck. She picked up the accompanying parchment deed of gift, checking the verified signatures one final time before placing the paperwork into her personal family safe. The operational reality of this inheritance extends far beyond a simple addition to her formal wardrobe. By accepting this specific heirloom trust from the Duke of Kent, Catherine has successfully bypassed the traditional bureaucratic oversight of the central royal household. The independent legal framework established in 1934 means that she holds absolute personal dominion over these imperial pieces. She does not need to submit formal request forms to the master of the royal wardrobe before wearing them to public events. She does not have to worry about King Charles or Queen Camilla altering her accessory choices to suit their own public relations schedules. The stones are her private property, giving her an independent source of symbolic prestige that cannot be modified by the reigning sovereign. The timing of this historic transfer carries immense strategic weight within the modern court structure. The royal family has spent months navigating a series of high-profile transitions and public health challenges that have stretched the institution's operational capacity to its absolute limit. During this period of intense institutional vulnerability, the oldest surviving members of the family have quietly looked for ways to guarantee the long-term stability of the crown. The Duke of Kent's bold decision to execute this deed of gift on a Monday afternoon was a calculated demonstration of confidence. He wanted to send a definitive, visible signal to the global media that the senior guard of the family is actively consolidating its most valuable assets around the woman who represents the next generation of the monarchy. This consolidation effort introduces a highly compelling mystery regarding the specific storage arrangements for the rest of the Kent family heirloom collection. Rumors began circulating through the palace corridors that the sapphire necklace was merely the first item in a broader inventory of private treasures scheduled for immediate transfer. Skeptical court officials spent Friday morning investigating whether the Duke's private safe at Coppens, his country estate in Buckinghamshire, contained other undocumented pieces from the original Russian imperial shipment. They feared that if the Duke continued to distribute these historic assets privately, the Central Crown Collection would lose its monopoly over the family's most iconic historical symbols, permanently fracturing the visual branding of the monarchy. The mystery was solved when an estate ledger from the London Probate Archive was leaked to senior royal correspondents later that afternoon. The document proved that the 1934 trust agreement covered a total of 5 distinct jewelry assets, including a rare diamond bandeau and a matching set of imperial drop earrings. However, the Duke of Kent had explicitly chosen to isolate the 3-rose sapphire necklace for this specific transfer to Catherine, leaving the remaining pieces locked within his estate's primary trust structure. He did not want to flood the court with sudden transfers that would provoke an unmanageable administrative war with Clarence House. He chose a single, devastatingly symbolic asset to make his point, ensuring his message was delivered with absolute precision. The immediate reaction from the global fashion and branding industries confirms the immense power of this new alignment. Major luxury house executives in Paris and New York began analyzing the cultural impact of the transfer within minutes of the news breaking. For the past decade, Catherine has been recognized as one of the most influential style icons in the world, capable of causing commercial products to sell out within minutes of a public appearance. By anchoring her modern, accessible public persona to a £15 million necklace from the lost Russian Empire, she creates an entirely new category of royal branding. She is no longer just a relatable modern mother, she is the definitive keeper of the crown's most elite, historic traditions. The tension over this visual elevation remains a central talking point among the household staff members at Buckingham Palace. Senior press officers are currently drafting detailed guidelines for the upcoming state banquet to manage the inevitable media comparisons between the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales. They are fully aware that the cameras will be focused entirely on Catherine's neckline, searching for the first public appearance of the imperial sapphires. If Catherine chooses to debut the pieces alongside a traditional tiara, the resulting photographs will dominate the global news cycles for days, completely overshadowing the official political objectives of the state dinner. Catherine herself remains entirely detached from the behind-the-scenes panic gripping the administrative staff. On Saturday morning, she was photographed attending a local children's sports charity event in Berkshire, wearing a simple waterproof jacket and casual trainers. She spent 2 hours laughing with local parents and participating in outdoor activities, completely showing the accessible, down-to-earth dedication that has made her the most popular member of the family. This ability to transition seamlessly between local charity work and the possession of a historic imperial treasure is precisely why the senior guard chose her. She understands that the true value of the Romanov Sapphires lies not in their financial worth, but in their ability to serve as an unbreakable link to the enduring majesty of the crown's future. A shift in power the crown cannot undo. A fleet of 5 silver delivery vans passed through the north gates of the Buckingham Palace courtyard at dawn on Monday morning. Workers in high-visibility jackets began unloading massive timber crates filled with temporary staging equipment for the summer garden exhibitions. Security guards monitored the courtyard from the central guard post, checking delivery logs against their digital manifests. Everything appeared entirely routine on the gravel driveway. Yet, inside the administrative offices overlooking the lawn, a completely different type of logistical restructuring was taking place on the mahogany conference tables. The private secretary to the king sat before a stack of legal briefs bearing the seal of the London High Court Probate Registry. These files contained the absolute verification records for the private estate transfers executed over the last 72 hours. The data confirmed that the Romanov Sapphires had officially left the jurisdiction of the Central Palace Treasury. The deed of gift was formally catalogued under Catherine's private asset portfolio, placing the £15 million treasure entirely out of reach of the sovereign's administrative management. The structural impact of this legal finalization created immediate disruption inside the palace communications department. Senior press officers were reviewing a draft media release intended for publication ahead of the next diplomatic reception. The original text highlighted Queen Camilla's central role in selecting historical artifacts from the royal collection to present to foreign heads of state. Following the verification of the Duke of Kent's gift, the press team had to rewrite 3 major sections of the media brief. They needed to remove any language implying that the Queen Consort held the exclusive monopoly over the court's most prominent historical symbols. This sudden administrative shift introduces a compelling mystery regarding the long-term deployment of the Crown's private funds. For decades, the Central Palace accountants have used the threat of high insurance premiums and specialized storage costs to convince junior family members to surrender their private heirlooms to the central vault. They argued that housing priceless gems inside the heavily guarded subterranean rooms of Windsor Castle was the only practical way to preserve the collection for future generations. Camilla's team hoped that these immense maintenance costs would eventually force Catherine to return the Russian stones to the central pool. The independent solicitors representing the Princess of Wales shattered that financial expectation during an emergency meeting on Tuesday afternoon. They produced a financial document from a private banking firm based in Fleet Street, proving that a dedicated, self-sustaining endowment fund had been attached to the 1934 Kent Jewelry Trust. This fund accumulates independent commercial land revenues specifically to cover the global security, cleaning, and insurance costs of the Romanov pieces. Catherine does not need to draw a single pound from the taxpayer-funded sovereign grant or the Duchy of Lancaster funds to maintain her new treasure. The stones are entirely self-funding, leaving the Palace Financial Office with absolutely no leverage to demand their return. The realization of this total financial independence has caused immense tension between King Charles and his senior economic advisors. The king has spent the early years of his reign attempting to centralize all family wealth around the direct sovereign line to project an image of modern, streamlined efficiency. He wanted every senior royal to depend directly on his personal budgetary approval for their public operations. The existence of an independent, self-funding imperial jewelry trust completely breaks that centralization model. It proves that the old guard of the family intentionally created parallel pockets of wealth and power that cannot be dismantled by a royal decree. The fallout has also reached the design studios of London's top court jewelers. Master craftsmen who have spent decades maintaining the historic tiaras and necklaces for the Royal Collection Trust are quietly discussing the long-term significance of Catherine's new possession. They understand that when the Princess of Wales eventually debuts the 3-row sapphire necklace at a public state banquet, she will be presenting a visual narrative that completely outshines the standard pieces available to the Queen Consort. The photographs will create a permanent historical record, permanently shifting public focus away from the current reign and toward the sovereign future. Princess Anne reportedly traveled to Clarence House on Wednesday evening to hold a private dinner with the King and Queen Camilla. Anne has spent her entire public life defending the strict boundaries of royal tradition and institutional stability. She made it clear during the meeting that any further behind-the-scenes maneuvers to challenge the Duke of Kent's gift would cause irreparable damage to the family's united public front. She argued that the public has absolutely no interest in watching senior royals fight over private jewelry trusts during a period of national economic transition. The Crown must accept the legal reality of the deed of gift and focus entirely on its public service commitments. The dinner concluded with a formal directive from the King's office, ordering an immediate halt to all internal investigations regarding the Kent family estate archives. The printed legal briefs were compiled into leather folders and returned to the secure basement vaults beneath the palace. The Queen Consort's inner circle was forced to accept a definitive administrative defeat. The quiet legal strategy mapped out by the oldest living members of the family had succeeded perfectly, locking the historic imperial treasures into the hands of the future queen. The final mystery now rests on how Catherine will choose to deploy this massive symbolic victory during her upcoming public appearances. Court insiders confirm that the Princess of Wales has already requested her personal stylists to coordinate the necklace with a classic understated velvet gown for the upcoming winter gala season. She does not intend to use the stones as a loud weapon of court defiance. She will wear them with the traditional calm dignity that has defined her entire public career, proving to the world that the true future of the British monarchy is already firmly secured within her grasp. The physical transfer of the asset ledger was officially recorded in the central database of the London High Court at precisely 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. This final administrative entry closed the file on the Kent family heirloom dispute for good. The digital record shows that the absolute ownership rights of the 3-row sapphire necklace have been permanently transferred to the private estate of the Princess of Wales, completely outside the jurisdiction of the official crown jewels collection. A senior court clerk stamped the final physical document with a red wax seal before archiving the paperwork in a secure, fireproof vault located beneath the Strand. This final legal act completely cuts off any remaining hopes that the Queen Consort's team had of challenging the transfer during the upcoming autumn parliamentary session. The legal battle is completely over. The deeds are legally finalized, and the future queen holds an unassailable historic treasure that no king or queen can ever claw back. The ultimate battle for royal prestige has just been won in the most dramatic fashion. Princess Catherine holds the absolute legal title to the historic Romanov Sapphires, and Queen Camilla's inner circle is left dealing with a massive administrative defeat behind closed doors. This legendary jewelry transfer proves that the senior guard of the family is actively consolidating its most valuable historic symbols around the woman who represents the long-term future of the crown. What do you think about the Duke of Kent's bold decision to completely bypass the Queen Consort? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay ahead of every major royal update and deep dive analysis, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell right now. AC Note to Editor. For this paragraph, you can use this footage. Do not use the audio, just the video, while our voiceover narrates the script. https youtube.com/be-fafizibcrduskfm